The Billionaire's Christmas Ball Bombshell. Prepare for shock. The tech titan was celebrating Christmas with his new, picture-perfect fiancée until his ex-lover, clutching their infant son, burst into the ballroom. A 2.5-year-old secret, guarded by tears and fear, is about to shatter beneath the crystal chandeliers. One look into the child's eyes, and a man's world comes crashing down. Before this emotional bomb explodes, tell us right now in the comments where you are watching us from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Make sure to follow our channel so you never miss these dark truths of life again. Now, settle in and savor every chilling detail. Boston was vibrating with the golden energy of a December Christmas. Gold lights shimmered in the windows along Newbury Street as people hurried past, loaded with packages and bright smiles. Julia Monty pulled the small blanket tighter around baby Alex and smiled, seeing how her 2-year and 4-month-old son's blue eyes lit up at the decorations. "Look, my love, at the beautiful lights," Julia whispered, stroking Alex's light brown hair. This was the first time she had been back to Boston in 3 years. 3 years since she made the most painful decision of her life: to leave, realizing she was completely losing herself in a relationship that consumed her. Julia had been an independent woman, a talented 32-year-old architect with her own dreams and a solid identity. But next to Liam Moretti, she had begun to live only for him, forgetting her projects, her friends, everything that defined her. The sound of her cell phone brought her back to reality. "Julia, did you arrive?" It was Chloe, her college friend, the only one who had maintained contact throughout all those years. "Yes, we just checked into the hotel. Alex is mesmerized by Boston." "Perfect. Listen, I need to ask you a huge favor. Remember my company's Christmas gala? Well, Mark got sick and can't go with me. I really don't want to show up alone. You know how these work events are." Julia hesitated. She hadn't returned to Boston to socialize, but so her family could finally meet Alex. Her parents had been begging her to visit for months. "I don't know, Chloe. I don't have a suitable dress for a gala, and I also have Alex. Please, I'm begging you. My mom can watch Alex. You know how much she loves kids. And as for the clothes, we are the same size. I'll lend you something stunning I have. It will only be a few hours." Julia looked at Alex, who was playing with a small Christmas plushie. Her son was her world, the reason she had found the strength to rebuild her life after Liam. She had tried to contact him when she discovered she was pregnant. For weeks, she called, sent texts and emails. But Liam, hurt and furious by what he interpreted as a betrayal, had blocked every trace of her, every number, every account. He had vanished digitally, as if their 2 years of intense love had never existed. The pregnancy had been complicated. Anxiety attacks, insomnia that kept her awake for hours, thinking about raising a child alone, and mild medication to control her nerves. But she had also discovered an inner strength she didn't know she possessed. "Fine," she finally sighed, but only for a few hours. 2 hours later, Julia was looking at herself in Chloe's bathroom mirror. The navy blue dress her friend had lent her fit perfectly, highlighting her slender figure and tanned skin. She had gathered her dark hair into an elegant low bun, leaving a few loose strands to frame her face. The years had changed her. She was no longer the insecure woman who got lost in the needs of others. Now she was a mother. She was strong and knew who she was, and what she wanted. "You look amazing," Chloe said, appearing behind her. "Liam will die when he sees you." Julia stiffened. "I'm sorry, I didn't tell you. Liam will be at the party. Well, his company is one of the main sponsors. You know how much he's grown in the last few years. He's practically the king of medical technology in the US. The world paused. Julia felt the blood freeze in her veins. Liam. There tonight. Chloe, I can't go. I can't see him. Not after. Chloe took her hands. It's been 3 years. He has a fiancée. You have Alex. You are adults. And it's a massive party. You might not even cross paths. But Julia knew they would see each other. After 3 years, after everything that had happened, after Alex, fate had a very particular way of playing with people's lives. And tonight, unknowingly, 3 destinies were about to collide in the most unexpected way possible. The ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel shone with breathtaking elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast golden reflections on the tables decorated with white and red floral arrangements, while the formally dressed guests conversed over champagne glasses and the soft murmur of a chamber orchestra playing modern arias. Liam Moretti adjusted his black silk tie and watched the room from the bar with a glass of scotch in hand. At 41, he had achieved everything he dreamed of professionally. His company, Moretti Medical Technologies, had revolutionized the medical diagnostics sector in the U.S. and was expanding across North America. He was rich, successful, and respected, and he was completely empty inside. Honey, why the face? The voice of Vanessa Ross brought him back to the present. His fiancée of 1 year approached him with a perfectly rehearsed smile, wearing a red gown that cost more than many people's monthly salaries. Everything about Vanessa was perfect. Her platinum blonde hair was gathered in a sophisticated chignon. Her makeup was flawless, and her jewelry was discreet but expensive. She was exactly the woman expected to be with a man in his position. "I'm fine," Liam replied. Though both knew he was lying. Vanessa was smart, successful in her career as a multinational marketing director, and knew exactly what role she had to play as the fiancée of the tycoon, Liam Moretti. But there was no fire between them, no connection that transcended words. It was a comfortable, appropriate relationship that worked for the glossy magazine photos. "The Whites want you to walk them through your new telemedicine project," Vanessa said, pointing to an elderly couple who were watching them from across the room. "And remember to smile more. The cameras are everywhere." Liam nodded automatically. He was used to these performances, smiling at the right moment, shaking the right hands, and saying the expected words. But lately, he felt like an actor tired of playing the same role every night. They walked toward the Whites just as the music shifted to a waltz. Couples began to dance in the center of the room, and Liam couldn't help but remember another time, other arms, and another woman who had made him feel completely alive. Julia. It had been 3 years since she had vanished from his life without explanation, leaving him with a shattered heart and the feeling of being utterly betrayed by the only person he had truly loved. The pain had been so intense that he had blocked every trace of her. He didn't want to know. He didn't want her to have the opportunity to destroy him a second time. But the sleepless nights continued, and in them, the memory of her dark eyes, her genuine laugh, and the way she looked at him as if he were the most extraordinary man in the world inevitably appeared. "Liam, are you listening?" Vanessa subtly dug her nails into his arm. "Sorry, I was thinking about the Atlanta project." It was a lie, of course, but Vanessa was satisfied with the explanation. She began to greet the Whites with that radiant smile she had perfected for these types of events. Liam participated in the conversation automatically, talking about market expansion and new technologies, while his mind wandered into dangerous territory. He wondered where Julia was, if she had rebuilt her life, and if she ever thought about him. The murmur of the room changed subtly. There was a moment of silence, like when something unexpected catches collective attention. Liam automatically lifted his gaze toward the main entrance, and then the world stopped. Julia was there. It was her. But it wasn't her. The woman who had just entered the room had the same brunette beauty, the same dark eyes. But there was something different. There was a confidence in her posture, a serenity in her gaze that he didn't remember. She wore an elegant navy blue dress that enhanced her slender figure, and her dark hair fell in soft waves to her shoulders. But what left him completely paralyzed was the child she carried in her arms, a little boy with light brown hair and eyes. Eyes that Liam would recognize anywhere in the world, because he saw them every morning in the mirror. His own eyes. Deafening silence. His whiskey glass slipped from his hands and shattered on the marble floor with a noise that cut the air like a knife. A pause for your soul. And here, my friend, the truth crashes to the ground. A successful tycoon has just realized that his ruthless ambition cost him the knowledge of his own child. Have you ever wondered how long such a powerful secret can stay buried? Now is the time to hit like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next twists. And leave us a comment right now with the word eyes if you think the gaze of that child is the right punishment for his pride. The sound of the breaking glass echoed throughout the room like a gunshot. Several people turned toward Liam, including Vanessa, who immediately bent down to help collect the glass while murmuring apologies to nearby guests. But Liam saw none of that. His eyes were fixed on Julia, who remained frozen next to the entrance. Alex, the little boy in her arms, looked curiously at the spot where the glass had broken, while Chloe greeted her from the other side of the room, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Julia felt her legs tremble. She knew it was inevitable to run into Liam at some point during the evening, but she hadn't imagined it would be like this. So direct, so immediate. And from the look on his face, it was evident he had seen Alex. He had seen the child's blue eyes, so identical to his own, that no explanation was needed. "Liam, are you okay?" Vanessa stood up, looking alarmed at her fiancé, who was still immobile as a statue. "I need air," he muttered, without taking his eyes off Julia. He began to walk toward her as if in a trance, making his way through the guests who chatted merrily, unaware of the emotional earthquake that had just struck. Vanessa followed him, bewildered, while a few waiters discreetly dealt with the remains of the glass. Julia clutched Alex tighter in her arms and took a deep breath. After 3 years of imagining this moment, it had finally arrived. She had prepared herself mentally for different scenarios. She had rehearsed possible conversations, but now that he was in front of her, all the words got stuck in her throat. Liam stopped 10 feet away. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe she was wearing flats. His brown hair had a few gray strands at the temples that gave him a more distinguished air, and he wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than Julia's monthly budget. But his eyes were the same, intense, green, capable of piercing any defense. "Julia," he whispered, and his voice sounded hoarse, laden with 3 years of unanswered questions. "Liam," she replied, surprised at how serene her own voice sounded. Alex, who was toying with the pearl necklace Chloe had lent Julia, looked up at Liam. For a second that seemed like an eternity. Father and son looked directly at each other. Alex tilted his little head with that natural curiosity of toddlers, while Liam felt the world reeling beneath his feet. "Mommy, who is this man?" Alex asked, with the brutal sincerity of a 2-year-old. The question cut the air like a knife. Julia felt her heart leap out of her chest. Liam closed his eyes for a moment, as if he needed to process what he had just heard. "Mommy, this child, this little one who had his exact eyes, called Julia, Mommy." "He is," Julia began to answer, but the words caught. Vanessa approached at that moment with a professional smile, but with alert eyes. She had noticed the tension, the way Liam was looking at that woman and the child, and her feminine instinct had already started sounding all the alarms. "Aren't you going to introduce us, darling?" Vanessa said, possessively taking Liam's arm. Liam looked at her as if he had just remembered her existence. He opened his mouth to say something, but Julia anticipated him. "I'm Julia Monty," she said, extending her hand to Vanessa with a polite smile. "An old acquaintance of Liam's. I just returned to Boston after a few years." "Vanessa Ross," the blonde replied, shaking her hand while studying Julia with expert eyes. "Liam's fiancée." The word fiancé hit Julia harder than she expected. Of course Liam had rebuilt his life. What did she expect? That he would remain crying forever? But hearing it out loud, seeing that perfect woman clinging to his arm, made something tighten in her chest. "And this beautiful little boy must be your son," Vanessa continued, smiling at Alex. "How old is he?" 2 years and 4 months, Julia replied automatically. Liam immediately did a mental calculation. 2 years and 4 months. If Julia had left in February 3 years ago and was pregnant when she left, the dates matched perfectly. "He has beautiful eyes," Vanessa commented. "Very similar to Liam's, don't you think?" The seemingly innocent observation fell like a bomb on the group. Vanessa hadn't noticed what she had just said, but Liam and Julia exchanged a look that contained 3 years of pain, secrets, and unanswered questions. "Yes," Julia whispered. "Very." At that moment, Alex squirmed in his mother's arms and reached his little hands toward Liam with that inexplicable trust that children sometimes have. "Hold me?" he asked with a sweet smile. The world completely stopped. Liam looked at the child, then at Julia, who had visibly paled. He was his son. No proof was needed. Everything matched. The dates, the eyes, the way Alex had reached out to him, as if instinctively recognizing him. He had a son, and he hadn't known anything about it for 2 years and 4 months. Liam instinctively reached out his arms for Alex, as if his body had recognized his son before his mind could fully process it. The child settled against his chest with a naturalness that took his breath away, and when Alex rested his small head on his shoulder, Liam felt something fundamental break and rebuild within him at the same time. "How sweet!" exclaimed Vanessa, completely unaware of the emotional earthquake unfolding before her eyes. "It's clear he likes Liam. You've always had a good touch with kids." But Liam didn't hear anything. He was focused on the feeling of holding his son for the first time. Alex smelled of baby shampoo and that unique sweetness of little ones. His small hands clung to his shirt collar with total trust, and Liam had to make a superhuman effort not to burst into tears right there, in front of everyone. Julia watched the scene with a broken heart. For more than 2 years, she had dreamed of this moment. She had imagined what it would be like to see Liam meet his son, but she never anticipated it would hurt this much. Seeing the look on his face, the way he looked at Alex as if he had just discovered something sacred, painfully reminded her why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. "What is his name?" Liam asked in a hoarse voice, without taking his eyes off Alex. "Alex," Julia replied. "Alex Monty." Liam noticed the boy only carried his mother's last name, and that hurt him more than he expected. Of course he only carried her last name. He didn't even know he existed. "Alex," he repeated, and the boy lifted his head to look directly at him. He smiled with that wonderful spontaneity of toddlers, and Liam felt himself falling madly in love with this little person who was half him, half the woman he had loved more than his own life. "I need to talk to you," he said to Julia in a low voice, with an intensity that immediately alerted Vanessa. "Excuse me," Vanessa intervened. "Talk about what, exactly?" Liam looked at her as if he had forgotten she was there. The reality of the situation began to filter through the emotional fog. He was at a public party, surrounded by partners, clients, and journalists, with his official fiancée by his side, holding a child who was obviously his son, but whose existence he had completely ignored. "Vanessa, could you give us a moment?" Liam asked, trying to keep his voice calm. A moment for what? Vanessa's voice rose an octave. Liam, I don't understand what is happening here. Julia intervened, aware that the situation was becoming embarrassing for everyone. Perhaps we should talk in private later, she suggested. This is not the time or place. No, Liam said firmly. Too much time has passed. I need to understand what happened. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know that. She stopped, unable to finish the sentence in front of Vanessa. But she was smart, very smart, and the pieces of the puzzle began to click in her mind with terrifying clarity. Wait, Vanessa said slowly, looking alternately at Liam, Julia, and Alex. This child is... Silence stretched between them like an abyss. Alex, completely oblivious to the adult's attention, had begun to toy with Liam's tie, giggling when the silk slipped through his small fingers. Daddy, look, Alex said suddenly, showing Liam how he had managed to make a tiny knot in the tie. The word fell on the group like a nuclear bomb. Daddy! Vanessa turned livid. Julia closed her eyes, realizing Alex had heard other children at the park use that word and had instinctively applied it to Liam. Daddy, Vanessa whispered, her voice shaking with contained rage. Liam looked at Alex, then Julia, then Vanessa. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to deny it, that he was going to maintain the charade, that he was going to choose the comfort of his organized life over the truth. But Alex chose that moment to snuggle against him and whisper, "You smell like Mommy's perfume." And Liam understood. Julia had kept something of his, a memory, a fragrance that reminded her of him. And Alex had grown up associating that aroma with the idea of an absent but loved father. His son had grown up knowing his scent, without knowing his face. Yes, Liam finally said, looking directly at Vanessa. I am his father. The words echoed in the air like a confession that changed everything. Vanessa took a step back, as if she had been physically slapped. How long have you known? Vanessa asked with a frosty voice. For 3 minutes, Liam replied with brutal honesty. Julia felt her legs tremble. Everything was going wrong. They had come to Boston for a quiet family visit, and now she was in the middle of a public drama that would destroy lives. Let's go, Liam said to Julia. We need to talk somewhere nobody can hear us. You are leaving me here? Vanessa asked in disbelief. In the middle of a work party, in front of all our acquaintances. You are abandoning me for your ex and her, your son. Liam looked at her with something akin to compassion. Vanessa, I'm sorry, but this is more important than any party. And without further explanation, with Alex still in his arms, he followed Julia toward the ballroom exit, leaving behind a devastated Vanessa and 100 guests who began to whisper among themselves about the drama they had just witnessed. In the hotel hallway, away from the noise and the stairs, Liam finally stopped and looked Julia directly in the eyes. Now you will tell me everything. The hotel garden was lit by wrought iron streetlights that cast circles of golden light among the December shadows. Liam had managed to get access to the private terrace from the concierge, away from prying eyes and the murmur of the party that continued inside. Alex had fallen asleep in Liam's arms during the short walk, and he gently rocked the boy while waiting for Julia to find the right words. Julia had taken off her high heels and was walking barefoot on the cold tiles, needing to feel something real under her feet while her world wavered. She had spent 3 years preparing for this conversation, but now that the moment arrived, she didn't know where to begin. When I left, she finally began, without looking at him. I didn't know I was pregnant. Liam pressed his lips together, but said nothing. His gaze was fixed on Alex, on the way his tiny chest rose and fell with each breath, on how he had rested a small hand on his shirt, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I left because I was losing myself, Julia continued. Do you remember what I was like when we met? I had my projects, my dreams of opening my own architecture studio, my friends, my routines. But little by little, without realizing it, I started living only for you. My plans adjusted to yours. My schedules revolved around when you could see me. My conversations were only about you. Liam looked up at her, and Julia saw something in his eyes that she hadn't seen in the last months of their relationship. Understanding. It wasn't your fault, she quickly clarified. You never asked me to do it. But I didn't know how to love you without losing myself in you. And one day, I woke up and didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. I didn't know what I liked to do in my free time because I didn't have free time anymore. I didn't remember what my dreams were because they had been replaced by yours. And it didn't occur to you to talk to me? Liam asked, his voice sounding pained. To tell me how you felt, to give me a chance to change, to find a balance? I tried. Julia turned toward him, and Liam could see the tears glistening in her eyes. Don't you remember? I told you multiple times that I needed more space, that I wanted to get back to my personal projects, but you always had a reason why it could wait. An important business trip, a dinner with investors, a company crisis. And I always gave in, because I loved you so much that your success felt like my success. Liam remembered those conversations, but from his perspective, they had been minor complaints, small issues that would resolve themselves once the company was more stable. He had never understood the magnitude of what Julia was giving up. So you decided to leave without telling me anything, he said. And there was an old bitterness in his voice. You disappeared as if our 2 years together had meant nothing. I left a letter, Julia whispered. Liam looked at her as if she had said something impossible. What letter? I left a letter for you in your office, explaining everything. Why I was leaving, that I needed time to find myself again, that I loved you, but I was afraid of completely disappearing if I stayed. I asked you to give me time, to trust that we could find a way to be together without me having to sacrifice who I was. Liam remained completely still. There had been no letter in his office. He had returned home that night and found the apartment empty, with no trace of Julia, except for a sticky note on the refrigerator that said, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. A long letter? He asked. Yes, 5 pages, handwritten. I told you about my fears, how I felt, my hope that we could find a way to be together without me losing my identity. I left it on your desk next to the photo of us in Italy. Understanding hit Liam like a punch. Carmen, his assistant at the time, cleaned his office every night. If she found a personal letter next to the photo, she probably thought it was trash and threw it away without thinking. I never received that letter, he said, his voice hoarse. Julia stared at him, looking for signs that he was lying. But she knew Liam. She knew every micro-expression on his face, and what she saw there was genuine shock. I waited 3 weeks in New York, she continued. 3 weeks waiting for you to call me, write me, or come looking for me. And then I found out I was pregnant. Alex stirred in Liam's arms, murmuring something unintelligible in his sleep. He automatically adjusted him with a naturalness that broke Julia's heart. I tried to contact you, Julia continued. I called your phone, but it had been disconnected. I wrote to your personal email, but it bounced back. I tried your Instagram account, your Facebook. Everything had been deleted or blocked. I deleted everything, Liam admitted. I was furious. I thought you had abandoned me without explanation, that everything we had lived together meant nothing to you. So I erased all traces so I wouldn't have the temptation to look for you and beg you to come back. They looked at each other in silence, understanding the magnitude of the tragedy that had been their separation. A lost letter, wounded pride, and misunderstandings that had cost them 3 years of their lives and the first 2 years of Alex's life. The pregnancy was difficult, Julia continued in a low voice. Anxiety attacks, insomnia, constant fear of raising a child alone. But Alex saved me. He forced me to be strong, to find parts of myself I didn't know existed. He taught me that I could love deeply without losing myself in that love. Liam looked at his sleeping son, thinking about everything he had missed. The first steps, the first words, the sleepless nights, the moments of discovery. "Why did you come back now?" he asked. "My parents wanted to meet Alex, and I needed to close this chapter. I needed you to know he existed, even though I didn't expect to run into you tonight." Liam nodded slowly. Then he asked what had been corroding his soul since he first saw Alex. "Will you let me know him? Be part of his life?" Julia studied him for a long moment. This was not the arrogant, self-centered man she had recalled in her moments of resentment. This was the Liam she had fallen in love with, vulnerable, real, and capable of recognizing his mistakes. "Alex deserves to have a father," she finally said. "But it will have to be at his pace, and on my terms. I won't allow you to enter and exit his life when it suits you." "I don't want to enter and exit," Liam replied firmly. "I want to be there every day, if you let me." Julia felt something move in her chest, something she had carefully kept buried for 3 years. "That we will have to discuss," she said. "There are many things we have to resolve." 2 weeks had passed since the night of the gala, and Liam discovered that being a father was simultaneously the most natural and the most terrifying thing he had ever experienced. He had canceled 3 business trips, delegated important meetings, and completely rearranged his schedule to spend afternoons in the small apartment Julia had rented in the Beacon Hill area. Alex had accepted his presence with the wonderful ease of small children. For him, Liam was simply Daddy, that tall, elegant man who arrived every afternoon with a new toy and who knew how to read stories with funny voices. At 2.5, he didn't understand the emotional complexities of the adults around him. And that innocence was both a blessing and a constant reminder of all the lost time. "Daddy, look!" Alex lifted a block tower he had built, dangerously wobbly. Liam quickly approached to stabilize it before it fell, and Alex's laughter filled the small living room like music. Julia watched from the kitchen while making coffee, pretending not to notice how her heart tightened every time she saw Liam interact with his son. It was evident he was madly in love with Alex, and vice versa. But this made everything even more complicated. Liam's phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was the 5th call from Vanessa in 2 hours. "Aren't you going to answer?" Julia asked, noticing the tension that immediately appeared on Liam's shoulders. "It's Vanessa. She keeps trying to talk to me. And you don't want to talk to her?" Liam looked at Alex, who had resumed building another tower, completely focused on his task. "What's the point? I told her the truth that night. I have a son with the woman I never stopped loving. There's nothing else to explain." The words hung in the air between them. Julia felt her heartbeat accelerate. Liam had just admitted he had never stopped loving her, but she wasn't sure she was ready to face that reality. "Julia, I'm sorry," he quickly said. "I didn't mean to put pressure on you. I know we are taking things one step at a time." But before Julia could reply, the apartment doorbell rang insistently. Alex lifted his head, alarmed by the aggressive sound. "Are you expecting someone?" Liam asked. Julia shook her head and walked toward the intercom. The image on the small screen froze her. Vanessa Ross was standing outside the building, impeccably dressed as always, but with an expression that promised nothing good. "It's Vanessa," Julia muttered. Liam stiffened immediately. "Don't open it. She has no right to come here." But Vanessa had pressed several buzzers, and someone else had opened the building door. 3 minutes later, she was knocking directly on the apartment door. "Liam, I know you are here. Your driver told me you come here every afternoon." Alex approached Julia, frightened by the loud knocks on the door. Liam automatically took him in his arms, and his expression had hardened in a way Julia remembered from their worst arguments. "Open the door," he told Julia. "It's better to face this now." Julia opened it, and Vanessa walked in without waiting for an invitation. She wore a white cashmere coat that probably cost more than the apartment rent, and her eyes shone with a cold anger that was blood-chilling. "So, this is the love nest," Vanessa said, examining the modest living room with disdain. "Very cozy." "Vanessa, you have no right to be here," Liam said, holding Alex protected in his arms. "I already told you everything you needed to know. Everything." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "You told me that for the entire year we were together, you were in love with another woman. You told me you were faking it with me while dreaming of your ex. You told me the company you built was based on money my father lent you, and that now you plan to abandon me for a woman who left you without explanation." Julia felt the floor waver beneath her feet. Vanessa's father had financed Liam's company. "That's not true," Liam said, but his voice sounded less sure than Julia would have expected. "Oh, no?" Vanessa pulled out her phone and began to read. "Business loan of $500,000, signed by Liam Moretti and guaranteed by Richard Ross, with personal guarantee and long-term commercial association commitment. Does that sound familiar?" Liam closed his eyes for a moment. Julia realized there was something he hadn't told her about how he had managed to expand his company so quickly after their separation. "That was a legal commercial loan," Liam said. "I paid it back on time." "A loan you got because you were sleeping with me," Vanessa retorted. "A loan my father would never have approved if he knew you were using his daughter to get financing." Alex began to cry, frightened by the loud voices. Liam automatically rocked him, but his attention was completely focused on Vanessa. "I never used you to get money," he said. "Our relationship and the loan were separate things." "Really?" Vanessa turned toward Julia. "Did he tell you that his miraculous company expansion is due to my family's money? That all that wealth he shows off was built on a lie?" Julia felt something break inside her. Not because of the money itself, but because of the realization that Liam had rebuilt his life very quickly after her departure, including starting a relationship that gave him access to the resources he needed to grow his company. "Julia," Liam approached her with Alex still in his arms. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh no?" Vanessa intervened. "Is it not true that you met my father at a business dinner 3 months after she left you? Is it not true that you started dating me specifically to gain access to his financial contacts?" Liam didn't answer immediately, and that silence was more revealing than any word. Julia realized she didn't truly know the man Liam had become after their separation. The Liam she had loved had been ambitious, yes, but never calculating in his personal relationships. But 3 years could change a person greatly. "I think you should leave," Julia told Liam in a very calm voice, "and take Vanessa with you." "Julia, please let me explain." "No, now. Alex is frightened, and I need time to process this." Alex reached his small arms toward Julia, seeking his mother's comfort. Liam reluctantly handed him over, and for a moment their hands touched during the exchange. Julia felt the same electricity as always, but now it was accompanied by doubts she had never had before. "When can I come back?" Liam asked, desperately. Julia looked at Vanessa, who watched the scene with barely concealed satisfaction. Then at Alex, who had calmed down immediately in her arms, and finally at Liam. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "I need time to think if the man I fell in love with still exists, or if he has been replaced by someone I don't recognize." 3 days had passed without word from Liam, and Julia had convinced herself it was better that way. Alex, however, asked for Daddy every few hours, searching for him in the apartment with the obstinate persistence of small children. "Where is Daddy?" Alex asked for the 100th time that morning, looking toward the door as if Liam would materialize if he wished hard enough. "Daddy is working, my love," Julia replied, hating the lie, but not knowing what else to say. How do you explain to a 2-year and 5-month-old child that adults make mistakes that can destroy entire families? The apartment doorbell startled her. For a second, her heart raced, thinking it might be Liam, but the intercom screen showed a delivery man with a brown envelope in his hand. Package for Julia Monti. Sender. Romano and Associates Law Firm. Julia signed for the delivery with a lump in her throat. Opening mail from a law firm was never a good sign, especially in her current situation. She sat on the sofa while Alex played with his blocks and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were a folder of legal documents and a handwritten letter in Liam's handwriting that she would recognize anywhere. The letter said, "Julia, I know you don't want to see me or talk to me, and I respect that, but you need to know the whole truth before making any decision about our future. The attached documents contain all the financial information of my company for the last 3 years. You will see that Richard Ross's loan only represented 15% of the total investment I needed to expand the company. The rest came from my personal savings, other investors I obtained on my own merit, and reinvested profits. You will also find the original loan contract signed 6 months before I met Vanessa. The connection that gave me access to Richard was not Vanessa, but Mark Ferretti, my lawyer, who introduced me to several potential investors after you left, and I was desperate to immerse myself in work to avoid going crazy. I met Vanessa at a casual dinner 3 months after getting the loan. By then, I had already paid 40% of the debt. If I were using her to get money, as she claims, why would I have continued to pay so aggressively? The truth is, I started dating Vanessa because she was safe. She didn't awaken anything in me similar to what you did. There was no risk of her breaking my heart because I never gave her my heart. It was a comfortable, practical relationship that allowed me to function socially without feeling anything real. I know this doesn't make me look good, but it's the truth. I used Vanessa as much as she used me. She got the status of dating a successful entrepreneur, and I got perfect company for social events without emotional complications. The last document is something I hope you never have to use, but that I want you to have just in case. A legal transfer of half of all my shares in the company in Alex's name. I'm not doing this to impress you or to buy you. I'm doing it because it's his right. He is my son, and he deserves to inherit what I have built, regardless of what happens between us. I'm not asking you to forgive me immediately. I'm only asking you to give me the opportunity to prove to you day after day that the man you fell in love with is still here, buried under 3 years of pain, but still alive. Alex needs me, and I need him, and you are still the only woman I have truly loved in my entire life. If you can find a way to give us another chance, I will be waiting for you at the park, where we used to go on Sunday mornings, every day at 10 o'clock, until you decide to show up or tell me to stop. I love you. I never stopped. Liam. Julia read the letter 3 times, her vision blurred by tears. Then she examined the legal documents. Everything Liam had written was true. The numbers didn't lie. Richard Ross's loan had been important, but not decisive. Liam had built his company primarily with his own effort and resources. Even more shocking was the share transfer document. Liam had put half of his company fortune in Alex's name, without conditions, without strings attached. It was a gesture that could cost him control of his own company if they ever had a legal dispute. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Alex had approached and was touching her cheek with his small hands. "I'm not crying from sadness, my love. Sometimes adults cry when something makes us very happy or very confused. Is Daddy making you cry?" Julia lifted him into her lap, inhaling that sweet smell of baby shampoo that always calmed her. "Daddy is trying to fix something that broke a long time ago, like when I broke my favorite cup and you glued it back together." The simplicity of the analogy made her smile through her tears. "Yes, like that. But sometimes adult things are harder to glue than cups." That night, after putting Alex to bed, Julia stayed awake reading and rereading the letter. She even called Mark Ferretti, Liam's lawyer, who confirmed every detail Liam had mentioned. The loan had been arranged months before Liam met Vanessa, and was only one part of a much broader financial plan. The next morning, she dressed carefully and took Alex to Central Park. It was Saturday, but she knew Liam would be there. He had said so in his letter. Every day at 10 o'clock until she decided to show up. She saw him from a distance, sitting on the same bench where they had shared so many happy Sundays years ago. He wore jeans and a gray wool sweater, none of the sleek, successful businessman he projected publicly. He looked older, more tired, and there was something vulnerable in the way he kept looking everywhere, waiting for her. Alex saw him before her. "Daddy!" he shouted, letting go of Julia's hand and running toward him with that pure joy that only children can feel. Liam picked him up and twirled him in the air, and for a moment Julia saw a happiness so intense on his face that it took her breath away. When Liam looked at her over Alex's head, his eyes held a silent question. Julia approached slowly and sat down on the bench next to him. "I received your letter," she said simply. And I think everyone deserves a second chance, even people who make stupid mistakes out of pride and pain." Liam closed his eyes, as if he had just received the most precious gift in the world. "Does that mean we can try again?" Julia looked at Alex, who was showing Liam a drawing he had made in preschool, which featured 3 figures, a mommy, a daddy, and a small boy. "It means we can start over, slowly, as a real family." This time, a month after the reunion at the park, Julia woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. She had moved into a larger apartment in the Upper West Side with Liam, but they were sleeping in separate rooms. It was a rule they had established: build trust step by step, without rushing, and always putting Alex's needs first. Walking into the kitchen, she found Liam sitting on the floor next to Alex, both covered in flour, attempting to make pancakes for breakfast. Alex had more batter in his hair than in the bowl, and Liam didn't look much better. "Good morning, Mommy," Alex sang out when he saw her, holding up his little flour-white arms. "Daddy and I are cooking." "I see that," Julia replied, stifling a laugh. "And how is the project going?" "We've discovered that cooking with a 2-year and 5-month-old is more complex than it looks in the movies," Liam admitted with a smile that lit up his whole face. This was a completely different Liam from the impeccable entrepreneur she had known 3 years ago. This Liam wore an old, batter-stained t-shirt, had messy hair, and didn't seem to be in a hurry to be anywhere other than in that messy kitchen with his son. "Let me finish the pancakes," Julia said, taking the pan. "You two desperately need a shower." Liam picked up Alex and headed toward the bathroom, but stopped at the kitchen doorway. "Julia, I need to tell you something. Vanessa called the office. She says she wants to talk, that she has something important to tell me." Julia felt her stomach tighten slightly. It had been a wonderful month, but she knew the past didn't resolve itself that easily. "Are you going to talk to her?" "I don't see the point. I have nothing left to explain to her, and maybe she has something to explain to you." Liam looked at her in surprise. After everything that had happened, Julia was suggesting he talk to Vanessa. "Why do you say that?" "Because unresolved issues always come back to haunt us," Julia said wisely. "And because I prefer to face any problems now, when we are strong, rather than waiting for it to appear when we are vulnerable." That afternoon, Liam met Vanessa at a neutral cafe in downtown Boston. She arrived on time, dressed in her usual elegance, but Liam immediately noticed something had changed in her. She looked less sure, less controlled. "Thank you for coming," Vanessa said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "What did you want to talk about?" Vanessa took a deep breath before replying. "I want to apologize for what I said in Julia's apartment, for how I said it, for everything." Liam studied her carefully. It was not an apology he would have expected. "Why now?" "Because I've had time to think, and I realized you were right. Our relationship was never real, was it? I knew you didn't love me. I knew it from the start, but it suited me to be with you, so I pretended I didn't care. Liam nodded slowly. At least there was honesty between them now. And when Julia showed up with your son, I realized I had never seen that expression on your face when you looked at me. You never talked about me the way you talked about her that night. Vanessa, let me finish, please. I came to tell you that I will talk to my father, explain the real situation to him, and advise him to restructure the loan so that you don't have any personal obligation toward me or our family, beyond purely commercial terms. Liam was genuinely surprised. It was the last thing he would have expected. Why would you do that? Because I deserve something real too, and as long as I'm tied to you by resentment or convenience, I'll never find it. They were silent for a few minutes, processing the official end of their relationship. Is there someone else? Liam asked with genuine curiosity. Vanessa smiled for the first time since she arrived, and it was a real smile, not the perfect social mask Liam remembered. Maybe. My personal trainer is completely inappropriate by my family's standards. He's 10 years younger than me. He comes from a working-class family and has no idea what social rules we are supposed to follow. But he makes me genuinely laugh, and when I'm with him, I don't have to pretend to be perfect. Liam found himself smiling too. I'm happy for you. Really. Everyone deserves to be loved for who they truly are, not for who they pretend to be. When Liam returned to the apartment that evening, he found Julia and Alex snuggled on the sofa watching a Disney movie. Alex had fallen asleep in his mother's lap, and Julia was gently stroking his hair. How did it go? Julia whispered. Better than I expected. Vanessa is going to fix things with her father, and I think we have both finally closed that chapter appropriately. Julia smiled, and Liam noticed there was something different in the way she looked at him. There were fewer barriers, less caution. You know something? She said. Alex asked why Daddy sleeps in a different room. Liam felt his heartbeat accelerate. And what did you tell him? I told him that sometimes adults need time to make sure they do things right. But I think we have had enough time. They looked at each other across the dimly lit room, with Alex sleeping peacefully between them. And Liam felt something fundamental click into place. Are you sure? Julia nodded. I'm ready for us to be a real family, all of us together in the same room, with all the imperfections and all the risks that entails. Liam walked over to the sofa and sat down next to them. Julia leaned on him, and Alex murmured something in his sleep before snuggling closer. For the first time since they had reunited, Liam felt he was exactly where he was supposed to be. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that things had perhaps been too easy lately. And experience had taught him that when life seemed perfect, that was when he needed to be most alert. The call came at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in February. Liam woke up immediately, hearing the urgent tone of his phone as Julia stirred beside him. They had been sleeping in the same room for 2 weeks, and it was the first time something had interrupted the domestic tranquility they had built so carefully. Hello? Liam answered in a hoarse voice. Mr. Moretti, this is Dr. Martini from St. Raphael Hospital. You need to come immediately. Your minority partner, Mr. Chen, has had a serious accident, and there are urgent legal complications that require your presence. Liam got up abruptly. Chen was more than a partner. He was the one who had helped develop the most advanced medical technology in his company. Without him, the company could collapse. What kind of complications? It's better to discuss this in person. But you need to know there is a very limited time window to make critical decisions about the company's future. Liam hung up and dressed quickly. Julia had woken up and was watching him worriedly. What's happening? Chen had an accident. I have to go to the hospital. Do you want me to come with you? Liam hesitated. In the last few weeks, he had included Julia in all the important decisions of his life, but this felt different, more dangerous in a way he couldn't explain. It's better for you to stay with Alex. I'll be back as soon as possible. But he didn't return as soon as possible. At the hospital, Liam discovered Chen had suffered a massive stroke and was in a coma. Worse, Chen owned the crucial patents for the technology that had made his company wealthy, and due to a clause in their original contracts, if he couldn't actively participate in the business, the patents would revert to a rival company in the US. "You have 72 hours to find a legal solution," Chen's lawyer explained to him. "After that, we lose everything." Liam spent the next 3 days practically living at his office, working with teams of international lawyers, looking for any legal loophole that could save his company. He didn't sleep, barely ate, and answered Julia's calls with distracted monosyllables. On the 4th day, Julia appeared at his office with Alex in her arms. "Enough," she said simply, planting herself in front of his desk. "Julia, you can't be here. I'm in the middle of a crisis." "Exactly. You are in the middle of a crisis. And you decided to face it completely alone, as if you didn't have a family who worries about you." Liam looked up for the first time in hours. Julia looked tired and frustrated, and Alex was watching him with those big eyes that had become his absolute weakness. "Don't you understand?" Liam said. "I could lose everything. Everything I've built. Everything that was supposed to be Alex's future. And you think I cares about the money more than your mental health? Do you think Alex needs a rich father or a present father?" "Daddy's sad," Alex intervened, reaching his little arms toward him. Liam felt something break inside him. He got up from his desk and picked up Alex, and his son immediately began to stroke his cheek, as he had seen his mother do when someone was sad. "I'm sorry," Liam murmured. "It's just that I'm so afraid of disappointing you again, of disappointing Alex." "You already disappointed us," Julia said gently. "These last 4 days, you have completely shut us out. Alex has been asking why Daddy isn't coming to dinner, why he isn't reading him bedtime stories." Liam realized he was repeating the exact patterns that had destroyed their relationship the first time. Prioritizing work over family, making unilateral decisions, and assuming that protecting his loved ones meant excluding them. "What can I do?" he asked. "I don't know how to resolve this without losing everything we've built." Julia sat down on the office sofa and motioned for him to sit next to her. "Tell me exactly what's happening. Everything. Without summarizing, without filtering, as if we are partners in this. Because we are." Liam explained the entire situation to her. The patents, the contracts, Chen's coma, and the rapidly closing time window. Julia listened to everything without interrupting. "Does Chen have family?" she finally asked. "He has a daughter in New York, but she is an artist, has nothing to do with medical technology, and is angry with her father for moving to the US. Have you talked to her?" "My lawyer sent the legal documentation, but she hasn't responded." Julia looked at him as if it were obvious. "Liam, when did you become so corporate that you forgot to talk to people as people?" "What do you mean?" "I mean that perhaps that woman is not responding to the lawyers because she is scared and sad because her father is in a coma, not because she doesn't want to help. Did it occur to you to call her directly? To talk to her, father to father, about what all of this means?" Liam remained still. In 4 days of legal crisis, it hadn't occurred to him once to make a simple human call. "Besides," Julia continued, "will you really lose everything? Or will you lose this specific company and have to start something new?" "Julia, I invested years in this, and we invested years in finding each other again. What is worth more?" Alex chose that moment to fall asleep in Liam's arms, trusting him completely. Despite his having been virtually absent for days, at almost 3 years old, he didn't understand corporate crises, but he understood when Daddy wasn't present. Liam looked at his son, then at Julia, and realized he had been so focused on not losing what he had, that he had forgotten why he built it in the first place. "You're right," he said. "I'll finally make that call to Chen's daughter, as a father, not as an entrepreneur. And if it doesn't work, well, I started from scratch before." Julia smiled and took his free hand. "And this time, you won't be starting over alone." Liam felt something fundamental click into place. He had spent so much time being afraid of losing his new life that he was sabotaging the very thing he wanted to protect most. But now, looking at Alex asleep in his arms and Julia by his side, he realized he already had everything that truly mattered. The call to New York was made from the hospital room where Chen remained in a coma. Liam insisted on making the call there with Julia and Alex present, because he wanted his family to witness the most important decision he had made in years, choosing humanity over corporate protocol. Mei Chen answered on the third ring. Her voice sounded tired, as if she had been crying. "Hello, May. This is Liam Moretti. I'm your father's business partner here in Boston." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "If you are going to talk to me about contracts and patents while my father is dying, you can hang up right now." "I won't talk about business," Liam said, looking at Alex, who was quietly playing with a plush toy on Julia's lap. "I will talk about your father, as a father." May didn't hang up, so Liam continued. "Your father spoke about you constantly, about your paintings, your show in Brooklyn last year, and how proud he was that you chose to follow your passion, even if he didn't fully understand it." "My father told you that?" "He showed me photos of your work. He kept them on his phone. He said you inherited his creativity, but that you were brave enough to apply it to art instead of technology." Liam heard May start to cry softly. "I didn't know he felt proud. I always thought he was disappointed because I didn't follow in his footsteps. On the contrary, he said you were braver than he was, because you chose a life of passion over a life of security." Julia smiled at Liam from across the room. She could see that he was being completely genuine, speaking from the heart instead of corporate strategy. "May," Liam continued, "I'm not calling to ask you to save my company. I'm calling because I believe your father would want you to know that the work we did together has helped diagnose heart conditions in thousands of children. His technology has saved real lives. Children." "Children?" "Yes. The diagnostic technology your father developed is primarily used in pediatrics. Last week, our team in Boston detected a heart anomaly in a 6-month-old that otherwise would have gone unnoticed until it was too late. If the patents revert to MedTech Corporation, that technology will become so expensive that only the most exclusive private hospitals will be able to afford it. Children from working-class families will no longer have access." Mai was silent for several minutes. Liam didn't pressure her. He simply waited. "What alternatives are there?" she finally asked. "Legally, very few. But your father drafted the original contracts. If there was a way to keep the technology accessible and simultaneously protect his legacy, he would have found it. Can I talk to him? Even though he's in a coma, the doctors say they can sometimes hear." Liam felt his heart tighten. "Of course. Would you like me to connect you via video call so you can see him?" For the next 20 minutes, May spoke to her unconscious father through the phone screen. She told him she loved him, that she had always been proud of him, and that she regretted not visiting him more often. She told him about her new show, the man she had fallen in love with, and the plans she had for the future. And then she told him, "Dad, I think I found a way to do what you would have wanted." Mei explained that she had researched the legal clauses in the last few days and had discovered that Chen had included a provision that allowed the patents to be transferred to a non-profit foundation in case of incapacitation, but only if that foundation was established with the specific purpose of making the medical technology accessible to low-income communities. "Would you be willing to give up commercial ownership of the patents?" May asked. "In exchange for continuing to lead the implementation of the technology through a foundation?" Liam looked at Julia, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Then he looked at Alex, who had stopped playing and was watching him with those blue eyes that were exactly like his own. For 3 years, he had built a company thinking that wealth was the way to protect his family. But now he realized there was something more valuable he could leave Alex. A legacy of having done something important, something that helped other families. "Yes," he said without hesitation, "I accept." Without consulting lawyers, without analyzing the financial implications, Liam laughed. And it was a laugh free of all the tension he had carried for weeks. "I've already consulted my most important advisors," he said, looking at Julia and Alex. "And they told me to do the right thing." 3 hours later, as lawyers from both sides worked on the foundation documents, Liam, Julia, and Alex were in the hospital garden. Alex was chasing pigeons, while his parents watched him from a bench. "Are you scared?" Julia asked. "Of having lost everything you worked for?" "No," Liam replied, and he was surprised at how sincere he sounded. "For the first time in years, I'm not afraid of anything, because I realized I already have everything I need." Alex ran toward them with a wilted flower he had found on the ground. "For Mommy and Daddy," he announced, presenting his treasure. Liam took the flower and then took Julia's hand. "There is one thing I want to ask you," he said, "and I want to do it here, in this moment, because this is the moment I became the man I should have been from the start." He knelt before her, right there in the hospital garden, without a ring, without planning, without anything but the absolute certainty of what he wanted. "Julia Monty, will you marry me? Not the rich entrepreneur, but the man who just realized that the only wealth that matters is the family we build together." Julia looked at him for a moment that seemed eternal. Then she smiled with that smile that had made Liam fall in love from day one. "Yes," she said simply, "but Alex has to approve the final decision." They turned toward Alex, who was watching them curiously. "What do you think, my love? Can Daddy stay with us forever?" Alex clapped his small hands and shouted, "Yes, family forever!" And as Liam kissed Julia in that hospital garden, with Alex laughing in his arms, he knew he had finally found the true meaning of having everything. 2 years later, the December morning arrived with that particular golden light in Boston that turned even the coldest days into promises of warmth. Julia woke up to the familiar sound of laughter coming from the garden of their new home in the Back Bay, a sound that had become the soundtrack of their daily life. She looked out the bedroom window and smiled, seeing Liam chasing Alex, now 4.5, on the frost-covered lawn. Alex wore a pink coat too big for him and shrieked with joy as his father pretended he couldn't catch him. In a corner of the garden, little Leo, 6 months old, watched from his stroller, waving his chubby hands, every time he heard his older brother's laughter. The Chen Moretti Foundation had surpassed all expectations. In 2 years, they had established free medical diagnostic centers in 12 U.S. cities and had begun to expand into Latin America and the Caribbean. The technology that had saved thousands of children's lives had become something much bigger than Liam had dreamed of when he was just an entrepreneur obsessed with profits. May had come to Boston 6 months earlier for the inauguration of the New York Center and had brought with her the first paintings she had created, inspired by her father's medical technology. Her works showed children's hearts in vibrant colors, pulsating with life and hope. Liam had purchased all the paintings in the series, not as an investment, but because they reminded him daily why he had made the right decision. Chensier had awakened from the coma 3 months after that day in the hospital, with some cognitive limitations, but completely aware of the legacy he had helped create. He now lived in a specialized residence in Boston, where Alex and Leo visited him every Sunday. Alex called him Grandpa Chen, and he taught him basic words in Mandarin in exchange for made-up stories. "Mommy, come on. Daddy says we can make a snowman, even though there's no snow." Alex burst into the room like a whirlwind of energy, followed by Liam, who held Leo. "And how exactly do you plan to make a snowman without snow?" Julia asked, accepting Liam's good morning kiss and caressing Leo's soft cheek. "With giant cotton balls," Alex announced, Daddy says imagination is better than reality. Julia exchanged an amused look with Liam. This was the man she had fallen in love with, doing anything for his family, even when the possible defied logic. Okay, but breakfast first, Julia said, and Leo needs his bottle. While preparing breakfast, Julia reflected on how her life had changed in these 2 years. She had married Liam in an intimate ceremony in her parents' backyard, with Alex as the ring bearer and Chen as a witness from his wheelchair. It hadn't been the fairy tale wedding she imagined in her 20s, but it had been perfect in its imperfection. She had resumed her career as an architect, specializing in designing spaces for pediatric medical centers. Her work was no longer just a profession. It was part of the family mission. Liam had insisted she follow her dreams, and now they had a true partnership in every sense: professional, personal, and parental. Leo began to cry softly, demanding attention. Liam automatically calmed him, rocking the baby while helping Alex reach the cereal from the high shelf. Seeing Liam as a father had been one of Julia's greatest joys. He was patient, present, and had learned to balance work and family in a way the old Liam never could have imagined. "Do you know what day it is?" Liam asked, as Alex devoured his cereal. "Saturday!" Alex shouted. "Yes, but it's also the anniversary of the day Mommy and I found each other again at that Christmas party." Alex wrinkled his nose, concentrating. "Before I had a little brother. A long time ago. When you were very little, and Mommy and Daddy were learning to be a family." Julia felt a pang of emotion remembering that night that changed everything. Sometimes she wondered what would have happened if she hadn't gone to that party, if Chloe hadn't convinced her, if Liam hadn't been there that specific night. "Are you going to separate again?" Alex asked suddenly, with that ability children have to ask the most direct questions at the most unexpected times. Liam and Julia looked at each other, surprised. "Why do you ask that?" "My love," Julia said, kneeling beside Alex's chair. "Because Sophie's mom says daddies sometimes leave and don't come back, and I don't want Daddy to leave again." Julia felt her heart break. Alex had spent the first years of his life without a father, and although he had been too young to consciously remember that time, a part of him harbored the fear of abandonment. Liam knelt on the other side of Alex, still holding Leo. "Alex, look at me," he said in a gentle but firm voice. "Do you see your little brother Leo?" Alex nodded. "Leo needs me to teach him how to play soccer like I taught you, and you need me to be here for all your birthdays, to take you to school when you are older, to meet your friends, and to walk you down the aisle one day, when you are very grown up, and find someone who loves you as much as I love your mommy. You really won't ever leave?" "I really won't ever leave, because I learned that the most important thing in life isn't what you have, but who you share it with. And I want to share all my life with you, with Leo, and with Mommy." Alex seemed to process this information for a moment. Then he smiled with that radiant smile he had inherited from Julia. "Okay, but then you have to promise me that you will always make impossible snowmen with me." "I promise I will always make impossible things with you," Liam said, kissing his forehead. That afternoon, after they had successfully built a snowman made of cotton balls in the garden, after Leo had fallen asleep in Julia's arms and Alex had succumbed to a nap on the sofa, Liam and Julia found themselves alone on the terrace, watching the Boston sunset. "Do you ever regret it?" Julia asked. "Leaving the company, choosing this over the wealth?" Liam looked at her as if she had asked the most absurd question in the world. "Regret it, Julia? 2 years ago I had money, but I didn't have a life. Now I have a life so rich that sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and find it was all a dream." "It wasn't a dream, no." Liam smiled, taking her hand. "It was better than a dream. It was a second chance I didn't deserve, but one I decided to honor every single day." They were silent, watching the sky turn orange and pink as Boston prepared for the night. "You know what I think?" Julia said finally. "What?" I think sometimes life separates us from the people we love to teach us who we truly are when we are alone. And if we are lucky, when we find each other again, we are strong enough to build something better than what we had before. Liam nodded, squeezing her hand. And if we are very lucky, our children never have to experience that separation, because we already learned the lesson. As the first stars began to appear in the Boston sky, Liam and Julia knew they had found something that was worth more than any fortune. A family built on true love, second chances, and the wisdom of knowing that what truly matters is not measured in bank accounts, but in shared laughter, in calmed fears, and in the daily promise of choosing each other. 2 years after that Christmas night that changed everything, they had learned that true love is not perfect, but it is persistent, and that sometimes the best families are those that have to fight to be together, because only then do they truly know the value of what they have. Would you have made the same decisions as Liam and Julia? If you had been in their situation, do you think true love can survive years of separation and misunderstandings? Your participation is very important to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for following us. If you liked the story, subscribe to our channel and leave a comment telling us what you think. Your comments and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.